Hey everyone, Sean here. A quick note, there's an issue with my audio in the back half of this show, so if your radio, headphones, or bone conducting device sounds a little weird, it's not you, it's me. My apologies in advance, and thanks for listening.
From the banks of Dewey Lake, it's the Dewey Pod Monster.
Welcome back. My name is John, and this is the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast. This is your weekly podcast about consumption. We are proud members of the URun Podcast Network. You can find all of our previous episodes, all of our upcoming episodes, and all of the other great members on the URun Podcast Network at urunpodcast.com. With me this week and every week is the host of the Dewey Pod Monster Podcast, and his name is Sean. And Sean, how are you this evening?
John, I'm not going to hurt you at all. I'm going to kill me somebody tonight.
That's good to know.
Yeah, good stuff.
Do you think I should stop saying, how are you this evening? I bet a lot of people don't listen to this in the evening.
I think they understand.
Fair enough.
What would you say instead? How are you today?
Debate.
Yeah,
how
show
are you
meeting.
This morning? I usually, yeah.
That might throw me off if you said, how are you this morning? Because it's definitely not morning.
No, it is definitely not. So, with that in mind, what have you been watching over the last few days, Sean? Anything worth mentioning?
I mean, I don't know if it's worth mentioning, but I'm going to mention a couple of things because I watched it specifically to talk about it. Not to say much about them, but I watched. So I talked last week. I think it was last week. Could have been a couple of weeks ago about Dark Side of the Cage. Right. We talked about that. I watched the next episode, which was somebody that I kind of liked as a fighter. It was an episode about Diego Sanchez. And Diego Sanchez was the first winner of the Ultimate Fighter. And he had really unorthodox approaches to camp. He was like part of the Jackson Wink camp. Greg Jackson was his like original trainer. And, they kind of go through his career, and his dark side is that once he I think he may have lost or something. He had a pretty like devastating loss for him. He decided that he was going to change his trainer, or he was going to have another guy come in and train him. And this guy was supposed to be this like MMA guru that nobody had ever heard of. And the guy ended up using Diego Sanchez.
Joe Rogan?
No, another little known guy, which I can't remember. His name was Josh, and I can't remember his last name, but he basically like brainwashed Diego Sanchez into thinking that he needed to rely on this guy. And the guy used all these really like off the wall. And when I say unorthodox, it was other people like Big John McCarthy is one of the people they talked to. And he's essentially saying, yeah, this guy's a nut. Like there was footage that had been released where the trainer was in an octagon with a couple other fighters, and he was chasing them like you would chase little kids, but he would have a knife in his hand, and he would like wave the knife at the people, at the fighters, and the fighters would like run away. And that was part of the training.
Was this like a legit threat, or was this
it was just part of his training? That was just some stupid thing that he did. And the guy ended up like Diego was really impressed with him because the guy ended up getting him in some hold. Like the first time they met, he's like, hey, let me see if let's try a few things. And he ended up getting him in this hold that he had never been in before. And he was like, I don't know, some kind of wrist lock or whatever. And it kind of chronicles Diego's rise back into trying to get back into UFC. But essentially like he ended up missing out on like one of his biggest fights, a fight that the UFC would have let him retire on, fighting Donald Cerrone, who was like another guy. It was supposed to be in New Mexico. They were both from New Mexico. And it was supposed to be this big homecoming fight. And he ended up never being able to fulfill that because this trainer had put him on such the outs, because the trainer would go into those fight meetings that they do before pay-per-views or before fight nights or whatever. And they do these fighter interviews, and they talk to him like, well, hey, what do you think your strategy is going to go in? What are some of the, they just have this interview so they can talk about it during the fight. And the trainer would make it all about him. Like, oh, you guys are talking shit about me on national TV. It would just be this whole thing. And Diego wouldn't say anything, which was totally not against, but the opposite of what he would normally do. He was normally really like outgoing and have a lot to say. So
boisterous.
Yeah, I guess it was an interesting episode. Next up, I watched Dark Side of the Ring has returned, and the first episode of the season. I don't know if you've seen it, if you watched it. It's Mick Foley and specifically the Hell in the Cell.
I saw that it was available. I haven't watched it.
That was pretty interesting because it's like a Dark Side of the Ring, right? I mean, they talk about the match itself, but then they also talk a little bit about Foley outside of it. They do have like really kind of good talk with Jim Cornette and Jim Ross, a few other people that were around at the time, talking about how the whole thing kind of came to be, and that Mick really tried to take the reins with Undertaker as to what would happen in the match. He was letting Undertaker basically throw him off. All this stuff was kind of set up, but it wasn't fully set up. And then it goes into kind of the after effects to Mick Foley, because now he's kind of, he's been through so much. They go through part of his early career and then the match, and then like post Hell in the Cell, where he was just involved in more and more of these like super hardcore matches. There was the one they mentioned specifically is the one against The Rock, the I Quit match, where he took, I think they said 9 or 11 headshots with a chair, like full.
Yeah, it was a lot.
Yeah, full blown.
Yeah.
And he was basically just told The Rock to sell it, make it look really good. And The Rock just kind of went overboard. And you could like they're exhausted, and the match ends. I think they play a recording of Mick Foley saying I quit, which that was then the controversy, because then it was obvious it wasn't him. But he was like, they mentioned kind of going back to Hell in the Cell that he was literally knocked unconscious for a few minutes, and they let him continue wrestling. And now, that obviously wouldn't fly.
I think I brought this up like a couple years ago on this show, but did you ever watch that YouTube video where it's just Mick Foley and The Undertaker watching the Hell in the Cell match?
I think that was from last year, and I don't think I ever watched that video.
I mean, not to rehash it too much, because it's just them commentating on it. I'm sure it's a lot of the same stuff or same commentary that you would have just watched, but it's only like probably 15, 20 minutes long, if I remember right. Like, that's probably a good companion to go along with that particular episode.
Yeah, I should check that out. That's a good idea. Good call. The last thing I'll mention is I watched Scream, the original Scream from, what is that, 94? 96.
96.
But the interesting thing about it is that I watched it with my kids, and I wasn't the one that brought it up. My older daughter was like, hey, we're going to watch a movie. Do you want to watch something with us? And I was like, yeah, sure. It was 10 o'clock on a Saturday. I was like, I don't care, whatever. What do you want to watch? And I don't remember what the initial choice was, but it came down to, hey, can we watch Scream? And I was like, you want to watch Scream? Because my older daughter is the biggest, like, scaredy cat. She, like I said, I've mentioned it before. I think she can do it now, but there were times when she couldn't go to the Halloween aisle at Home Depot where all the inflatables and shit are. It would just freak her out. So we watched it, and
especially if Ghostface freaks her out, because that's all over all those.
I don't know if she really knew much about it, but yeah, it was interesting. My younger daughter stayed up the whole time, which she's 13, and she's generally, if it's too late, she just conks out. She doesn't take after me at all. And my older daughter she watched it, but a lot of it she watched behind like blankets, with blankets over her face. I was like, oh, so what'd you think? She was like, it was fine. You said it wasn't going to be gory. And I said, well, it's not as gory as like a lot of other things. I mean, it's pretty, for the gore, at least, it's somewhat tame, I think, by normal standards.
My idiot friend is obsessed with this movie.
So it was a good experience. We almost have watched Scream 2 a few times since then, but I think that'll be coming up soon. We'll see what she thinks of that, because she kind of called the whole 2 killer thing, but I don't know. You don't have kids, you don't have teens, but I don't know if it's a teen thing in general. And plus, it's been around for almost 30 years at this point.
I kind of feel like there's a good chance that if you haven't seen Scream, that there's 2 killers, just because it was so huge and still is so huge. And it's not just a horror movie. It's like part of the pop culture zeitgeist. So it's like saying, like, I haven't seen Halloween, but I know guy with the white mask, Michael Myers or whatever. Like, it's one of those at this point.
That too. And she is one of those people that will go and she's really deathly afraid of vomiting. So she's like, does anybody puke in this movie? Does anybody vomit? And I'm like, no. Why would you think that happens? And then she looks it up. So she needs to get the recon to make sure that nothing is going to make her sick. Like, can we just watch the movie? That's the big, like, frustration that I have with watching movies with her, is that I'm trying to expose her to movies without her having a whole lot of, like, knowing about it in advance. I like to go into movies totally blind. I mean, that's me. Yeah, so that I kind of feel like I feel like that's the best way to do it. And maybe I try too much to impress that on her, and she just doesn't, she's not into that. We watch trailers for shit that we're going to watch. Can we watch the trailer? Does it have a trailer? Yeah, it has a trailer. Let's watch the trailer. Like, I just want to go in blind. I was watching a movie on the couch, a really shitty movie that you and I were talking about before we started. And, well, I didn't really tell you all that much about it, but...
That's called a teaser, people.
Yeah. That will become content going forward. That's why I'm not bringing it up. But she's like, why are you watching this? It's like, sometimes I like to watch shitty movies. Like, I like to just go into a movie knowing it's crappy. And then if it's really good outside of it just being low budget and shitty, it's a good surprise. It's pleasant. It's a pleasant surprise. And she's just not into it. But yeah, so those are the big top 3 things that I wanted to talk about today that I've been watching. How about you, John? What have you been watching this week since we last talked?
I got to say, if you had a bingo board for me and one of the questions was, what has Sean been watching this week? Scream would not be on my bingo board at all. But
what would be?
I'm
curious. What would be on the bingo board?
Jeopardy.
I haven't watched it since Saturday. I watched them all at once. Yeah, I watched the whole week at once.
I haven't watched it since Friday, but okay. That's good to know.
Bingo.
My week's been a little weird watching wise. I'm still kind of like in this bit of a funk and not like overly interested in stuff. I've had a lot of basketball content this week so at the time of this recording, it's March 31st. So we are just coming out of the Elite Eight, and next week is the Final Four of the tournament this year. So I've been watching that, which Saturday went good because Michigan lost, and then Sunday went poorly because Michigan State lost. So, it's my interest in that will go way down. I've also still been watching Celtic City on HBO, which I think I'm 4, maybe 5 episodes in now, and I'm well into the Larry Bird years now, and it's interesting to see how much less of a shithead he is in this compared to in Winning Time, because they really paint him out to be just like a real cock in Winning Time.
Yeah, and he's real hateable in Winning Time.
Yeah, for sure. And the whole like shit talking thing about him on the court, that's like legit. They still have plenty of that in there, but his like persona in front of the camera and stuff, like there's a lot of clips of him when he's, I don't know how old he is at that age, probably 25 or, whatever, young shithead. And yeah, he's not nearly the prick that he was in Winning Time. He still has that like chip on his shoulder, I guess, which, I mean, you can make the argument at the time he was one of the 2 best players in the league, if not, top 3, or it'd be him, Wilt Chamberlain, and Magic, I guess. But it's interesting because the show is still like super racially charged. Like they're well into, I think that'd be the 80s at this point, and just as much of this show is about the racial tensions in Boston surrounding the team as it is about the Celtics, which I'm still finding more interesting than the basketball stuff, because it's more about how they balance everything and like, conduct business as a team. And granted, there's a lot of winning that goes on with it, so that probably helps. But yeah, it's a really good docuseries. So if you or anyone has any interest in that, I still am strongly recommending that. My biggest thing I dislike about it is I keep wanting to call it Celtic Pride. I'm like, no, that's that stupid movie with the guy from Home Alone and Dan Aykroyd, but not that guy from Home Alone. The other guy, David Stern. Yeah, no,
David Stern. David Stern was the commissioner. Yeah.
I did this last time too, didn't I?
I think so.
Chud or something.
Sounds familiar.
Past the basketball stuff, we both threatened to watch Bride of Reanimator. I got around to watching Bride of Reanimator. I don't want to go too deep into that because I feel like there's a good chance that that's going to get revisited in a longer format. But I will say it's interesting because it's very much so a sequel that progresses the story forward, like without any real question. And it is very much so a movie that like, oh, they're doing a bunch of shit that didn't exactly happen in the last movie, but like feels kind of like it did. It feels very like recycled, but like off the wall, fucking weird and new at the same time. And I'm not quite sure how to pinpoint that. The other thing that I found myself thinking about maybe halfway through the movie. So you have the first movie under your belt and now halfway through the second movie. And we're probably like, I don't know, 25, 30 reanimated things into this movie, like things that have come back to life. And not a fucking one of them has gone well. Like they all wake up just violent as shit and all this. And, like there's not a single one where they wake up and it's like, yeah, they're not dead, but they're not exactly doing good, like in any way. So like I found myself watching this and questioning it like an hour in, like, I understand that this is like scientific progress in the sense that he's still reanimating things and that's like what he's obsessing over. But these aren't going well. Why does he keep doing this with humans that are larger than him and that can beat the fuck out? Like, wouldn't you pick like, I'm not saying that you should go pick like smaller humans, but like, I don't know, something less capable of getting up and like throwing you in a chokehold immediately, or I don't know. It's a bizarre movie. If you like the first Reanimator movie, you'll probably like enough in the second one to give it a spin. Like, it's not going to detract that much. And now I'm going to have to go watch Beyond or whatever it is, third one, because I think it's Beyond Reanimator, just to see how far off the rails it decides to go. But it, again, about halfway through the second movie, you're like, if this is all being done in the name of science, I don't feel like the scientific method is really holding its weight the way it's supposed to, because these experiments are not going well. And then, yeah, past that, the only other thing I watched this week was Vice Academy 2. So I guess I had a little bit of a sequels week. Vice Academy 1 was Ginger Lynn and Linnea Quigley playing vice cops and being slutty for about an hour and a half. Guess what Vice Academy 2 is?
Taxi drivers in L.A.
Close. It's Linnea Quigley and Ginger Lynn being slutty and pretending to be cops for an hour and a half. I have no complaints.
Oh, okay.
It's fine. So, yeah, it's not exactly the first movie. Like, there's actually more production value in it. Like, I don't know if that's just because it's a couple years later and maybe they got a better camera, or for all I know, maybe they made $100 off of the first one. Your guess is good as mine there. But again, no complaints. It's got Linnea Quigley and Ginger Lynn slutting it up. What's to hate? But yeah, that's all I really got for this week. I'll try to. I have a couple things that just came out that are on my back burner right now that I hope to get through this week. So hopefully I'll have something other than basketball and sequels to talk about.
Yeah, we'll see if we have anything for next week for the conclusion of Gary Busey month.
So yeah, it's Gary Busey month, and we've gone all this time into this episode without talking a single word about Gary Busey, and I'm kind of pissed off about that. So we're going to take a break. We're going to hydrate a little bit. We're going to come back, and we're going to talk about Gary Busey and the movie Surviving the Game. AI John here. Have you ever wanted to take a deeper dive on the mysteries surrounding the lives and deaths of notable figures?
I feel like I'm asking myself that every day, but I'm old and don't know where to get this kind of information.
Well, I've got the podcast for you. The Between the Facts podcast looks at the events that define their legacies, unearthing hidden truths, alternative narratives, and the theories that keep us questioning the official narrative.
Now, that sounds like something I can dig into. Where can I listen to this show?
You can find Between the Facts and a lot of other great podcasts at youronpodcast.com. I guarantee that you'll find something there for you. All right, so we are back, and as mentioned, we are talking about the movie Surviving the Game. This is a movie that I couldn't even count how many times it's been brought up on this stupid show since its inception, but
how many times did you bring it up?
417.
Oh, okay. All right, good. I still got the majority, though.
That's right. You're at 419. So I'm playing catch up. So in the interest of finally talking about the movie Surviving the Game, quite possibly the genesis of this podcast, I don't think it was, but I'm going to go ahead and say it was. We're going to start with a third-party review about the movie Surviving the Game. And this one comes from Joe S. And it's right off the jump. It's one of the first ones on Rotten Tomatoes. And he says, one of my personal favorites based on the cast, and it's par with The Hunt. Running Man is great as well. 5 stars.
Wow.
I really like it because he adds, Running Man is great as well. So
I need to friend that guy.
It's always good when you're reviewing a movie that you make no points about the movie, except mentioning that there's a cast in it, and then mention another movie that's also being great.
That you like equally as much. Yeah.
Yeah. So, Sean, that scathing review aside, or I guess that's a glowing review. It's not really scathing. Whatever. That review aside,
go out of 5
tell us a little bit. That's true. Tell us a little bit about Surviving the Game.
Okay, so for that, we go over to IMDb. We look up the words, or we type the words. I type the words, Surviving the Game, and that brings up the 1994 movie that's an hour and 36 minutes long. It gets a 6.2 out of 10 with 14,000 reviews. And if we scroll on down to the storyline of the plot, we never know which one's first, but we read the one on top because if they didn't want it to be read first, they wouldn't put it on top. It says, a homeless man is hired as a survival guide for a group of wealthy businessmen on a hunting trip in the mountains, unaware that they are killers who hunt humans for sport and that he is their new prey. And if we scroll on down to this storyline, I guess that makes the top one the plot. We take this, it comes care of Volker Bohm, and this is a little wordy, but I'm going to cut it off after a while because this is pretty much the whole entirety of the movie. It says, Jack Mason, who lives on the streets, wants to cease his life when on the same day his two best friends die, his dog and an older man with whom he shared his food and roof. Just in time, Walter Cole from a charity organization can prevent his suicide and also offers him a quite well-paid job as a servant for a hunting party in the Rocky Mountains. Mason accepts the job and flies with them to a hut in the wilderness where they prepare everything for the four rich businessmen who want to hunt something special. Mason doesn't know it yet that he's the victim of their sport that should lead to the basic instincts of man, but they didn't count on his cleverness. I guess I am reading the entire thing.
With that very well-written storyline out of the way, Sean, tell us who's in this dark comedy of a movie.
Well, in this dark comedy, we have Rutger Hauer, who plays Thomas Burns. You may know him from Blade Runner, Blind Fury, where he plays a blind man who has he's adept with a katana, The Hitcher, Hobo with a shotgun, of course. We've got Ice-T, who plays Jack Mason. He is a rapper. You may know him for that. He's been in Law & Order, Leprechaun 5, Johnny Mnemonic, Tank Girl, Breakin' 2, Electric Boogaloo. We've got Charles Dutton, Charles S. Dutton, I believe, who plays Walter Cole, who was in probably most notably Rock, the TV show on Fox, Alien 3, and Gothica. We've got Gary Busey, who plays Doc Hawkins. He's been in Hider in the House, Silver Bullet, Gary Busey, Pet Judge, and Sharknado 4. And then we have F. Murray Abraham, who plays Wolf Sr., who's been in Amadeus and Last Action Hero. And then John C. motherfucking McGinley. He plays John Griffin. He's been in Scrubs, Point Break, Seven. He's a character actor with over 100 credits to his name.
I feel like you could have said John C. McGinley. You almost.
It is John C. McGinley, actually.
Yeah, John C. McGinley. I feel like he's basically playing a discount version of Jesse Ventura through the majority of this movie, but yeah, we'll probably come back to that.
I could see that. What's the guy's name that was in Happy Days and he was in Married with Children, who was always the kiss of death for any TV show? They said when he started to appear on the show, you knew it was going to be over soon. I get him and McGinley confused, but I digress.
I'm not sure who I actually like John C. McGinley.
Yeah, same.
I don't know if this is his first movie or it's early, in his.
Oh, it's definitely not his first. No,
but this one, I don't know. We'll come back to that. I've already said. So let's start with some of the obvious. So I know that neither of us, this is not a first watch for either of us. This is the first one in quite a while for me. I'd say at least 10 years I've actually sat down and watched this. Have you watched this? I'm assuming more recently than that, or what's your history with this particular dark comedy?
Are you fucking kidding me, John? Are you fucking kidding me right now? No, I didn't. Honestly, I didn't know that you had seen it before, but I had most recently watched this last year. Had a nice laugh.
I don't remember when it was, but it's been a while. It would have been I remember renting it. I want to say it was on VHS. It might have been on DVD, but I remember it was a video store rental for me when I saw it. So I don't exactly know when that would be, but that gives you an idea of how far back it might have gone.
Yeah.
But again, this is one that's come up numerous times. I don't know why this is one that we keep referencing back to, but it was kind of nice to go back and
why not?
Revisit this. Yeah. Why the hell not? Let's start with some stuff that we like, and I'll let you open it up on this. Sean, what are some of the things that you enjoy about surviving the game?
Well, before I get into that, I wanted to bring up because everybody's screaming at their podcast device of choice. It is Ted McGinley.
Why is this a dark comedy?
No, Ted McGinley is the guy that that I was thinking of earlier. So I didn't need that, screaming in my life. But anyways, I like that in this movie that Ice-T, Jack Mason, is this total fish out of water. In the whole movie, he's this guy from the streets. He's he used to be a mechanic. He's now homeless. He lost his family. he just is way out of his element once they take him out of the streets. But he still finds some way miraculously, because he's just so clever, to like get a one up on these rich guys with all their vehicles and their weapons and all this. I have to say, Ice-T, I don't know if it's just in the beginning of this movie that I noticed it the most, but his acting is horrible. Like his reading of lines, his delivery of the lines are just really shit pretty much until they get to the mountains. And then it kind of clears up and gets a little bit better. But I just like that his character is so far out of his element, but he still is able to, figure out what he needs to do to survive this game.
So for me, one of the things I really like about this movie is how it kind of flips a lot of your expectations. Like, you take the character of Ice-T, and I'm going to go ahead and put spoilers here because this will kind of fuck up the movie to an extent, even though I'm not going to reveal the ending. There's, once they get Ice-T to the mountains and they actually start the hunt of Ice-T, or Mason, whatever we're calling him in this movie, one of the things he does really early in the movie, like within like 5 minutes of being on the run from these guys, is he goes right back to the cabin and he kind of fucks some shit up there and kind of starts this, what you would think would, I think if this was a lot of other movies, or if it was in different hands, I don't know if you would say maybe the scriptwriter or the director, I could very easily see them ending up back at the cabin as like a third act move, where that's like, okay, we go back and that's where the plane is, or
like the showdown or something.
Yeah, like I could see that being the case in the majority of movies, and they don't do that. They flip it and they have him go back, and it kind of makes you feel like he's smarter than the average bear quite early in the movie. And as the movie goes on, again, I haven't seen this in a while, so I don't remember feeling this way the first time, but this movie has kind of like this is not a horror movie, so hear me out on what I'm about to say, but it kind of takes the idea of a slasher movie and flips it. Instead of having one guy chasing down a group of people and picking them off one by one, you have a group of people chasing down one guy and he's picking them off one by one. So it's taking that very loose idea of what a slasher is and just flips it over and playing it for a whole different vibe. And it works really well in this movie for what it's doing. So those same thing, but two different like examples of it in this movie. I like how this movie flips a lot of your expectations.
Yeah, I didn't really think of it that way. I mean, obviously the hunter becomes the hunted, or the opposite, the hunters become the hunted. But yeah, that's right. I never really thought of it in that kind of slasher perspective, but it makes a lot of sense. Another thing I like about this,
it's probably wrong. I don't like that I compared it to a slasher because it's not that, but I couldn't think of a better way to describe it.
Yeah, but that's such a common trope in slashers that it's obviously the one guy, except for the one we talked about earlier, where it's the one guy who's taking out all these people. And this movie, well, you said, obviously not a slasher, but it flips the script where this one guy who initially is the person that is on the run, running for his life, starts to make the guys that are all kitted out and all, gunned up and everything, that they're starting to get really nervous as to what this guy's going to do, because he's unpredictable. He's just he can do anything at any time. A thing that I really like about this movie too is that it's like a $7 million budget in 94, I think is when I said this came out. It's a $7 million budget roughly, but with the cast, like you recognize the main cast is like 6 people. You recognize all of them, actually. There's one of them, the son, Wolf Jr. I didn't mention. I don't know his name, but I recognized him. And
William McNamara.
Yeah. And exactly, that guy. And it feels like really big budget, even though it's really not. I mean, there's not a lot that they have to do to kind of gussy it up to make it look like it's big budget, but it, for some reason, something about the film, for the most part, feels really high budget. Even the effects, the explosions. I think there might be maybe an effect here or there that kind of feels or looks kind of cheap, but for the most part, it looks really well. It's really well done. There's, you couldn't pick this out and say, oh, that costs less than 10 mil, and I don't know what the casting cost, but it was, it looks really good.
Yeah, I would agree with you on that. It does look good. And I would think I do think any of the stuff like that looks kind of like suspect, I think is more of it being a product of its time than like a lack of effort or anything like that.
Right.
Again, this is still early in like digital effects and all that type of stuff. So you got some of that's like grain of salt stuff.
Yeah.
But it kind of feels like they caught a lot of these guys at the right time to get them in a movie like this. Like Ice-T was a big rapper at this point. Like because he had Body Count, and he had, I think his solo rap career was going at this point too. So he was huge as far as
he did
that's
solo
concerned.
before
as far
Body Count.
I thought he did Body Count first, but whatever.
No,
I'm not an Ice-T historian, so I'll take your word for it.
You should be, goddammit.
But he only had like 1 or 2 movies under his belt at this point, and he was basically like an up and coming actor. Gary Busey was only there for like a day, so I'm sure he got whatever his minimum fee was, and holy shit, did he milk it for everything it was worth, including pissing off Rutger Hauer, which is kind of funny in retrospect. Charles S. Dutton, although there's a part of me, and I definitely didn't think this the first time I watched it, but there's a part of me watching it this time that really kind of wonders, like, I wonder if he was cast just so it wasn't 5 white guys hunting the 1 black guy. Like, if there was that kind of element in there. If this was made in 1984, I don't think that would even be a thought. But in 94, there might have been just an inkling of like, this might look kind of bad.
Maybe an inkling.
Right.
Yeah.
But he's a character actor. Like, I think of him from Oz all the time. He was on season 2 as one of the like big, not criminal characters. You mentioned Alien 3. He's a character actor in that. Like, he's very, like, if he's done a leading role, I don't think I've seen it. I think he's just a character actor, but he's a really good character actor, and he delivers on this. Like, he's a very good sociopath, because when he saves Ice-T at the beginning of the movie and then convinces him like to get this job and all this, I'm like, all right, I'm not buying that he's trying to watch this, like, not thinking of it as like, I've seen this movie, I know where this is going. Just like looking at the performance when he is, I'm like, he doesn't really like play his hand of being a shitbag until you're like 100% sure he's a shitbag. You know, we haven't said it yet, but Rutger Hauer's, I mean, for a movie that's full of guys trying to, like, in a pissing contest to see who can be the most like macho and or sadistic,
who can have the most yellow pee.
Yeah, basically. Rutger Hauer is pretty entertaining in this movie. I don't quite understand why, spoilers, when he puts down one of his own team, I won't say who, I guess, but he decides, basically he's in a situation where he's gonna die and he's just putting him out of his misery is what's happening. And I don't understand why he doesn't just put a bullet in him and make it quick. Instead, he like chokes him out for like 20 minutes.
Yeah, he makes it personal.
You know,
20 minutes.
It's really weird.
It's pretty quick.
It's very drawn out.
He makes it really personal. Yeah.
I'm not quite sure why that happened, but it kind of builds his character of being like a shithead. So I guess
he's saving the quarter on the bullet.
Yeah.
That's cost 25 cents.
Yeah.
I'm going to save that. He's going to
even
choke
though
you.
I'm like a multi-billionaire or whatever he is at this point.
Yeah.
So.
It's not really ever mentioned, but he's supposed to be a rich guy.
He's well off.
Yeah.
How about dislikes? Is there anything you dislike in this movie?
Well, I mean, I think that the first, so this hour 34 minute movie, right? Or hour 30, whatever it is. I feel like that first 30 minutes, it does build the character of Mason. It kind of gives you it draws you in along with Mason to these guys, because you think that they're on the level, that they're just being charitable. They're doing this nice thing for this guy that lost his family in this fire. But at the same time, that first half hour, if I had never seen this movie and just wanted to get to the meat and potatoes, I feel like you could cut that first half hour and give me 5 minutes and say, yeah, I was homeless, and yep, now I'm not. We're going to hire you, and we're going to hunt you for game. But there's this whole thing, you know, it's him. I don't know what it is, and I don't know if this is based off the book, The Most Deadly Game, or Most Dangerous Game. Sorry, Most Dangerous Game. And I don't know if that's like a part of that story where this guy, you know, he has this whole thing where he gets into clean himself up or whatever. But this movie, that first half hour is just like, it's Ice-T and his dog gets hit by a car like immediately, and that puts him in this downward spiral. It puts him in this funk, and then his buddy he dies overnight, like has a heart attack. He's this older guy, and he just dies out of nowhere. And then, you know, then he gets picked up, and then he goes and takes his bath, and then he cuts his hair and he shaves his beard. It's like, is this really all that necessary? Like, we know who Ice-T is as this character.
Yeah.
He's pretty one-dimensional. He's not like this super multifaceted guy that you have to like get to know and all this shit. So the first half hour of the movie to me kind of drags because it's all to pay off this second hour where it's this run and gun, it's this cat and mouse, it's this game where they're like trying to outsmart each other and the hunters become the hunted, and it gets really exciting. But you have that whenever I watch this, there's always that first half hour that it's not a snooze fest, but it's kind of like, man, I really wish they could pick this up.
I noticed that too. And I think I noticed that because I was about a half hour in and I'm like, I remember this being a lot more entertaining. And I should walk that back a little because I think giving Ice-T the backstory that they give him in this, it's actually, as far as this kind of movie and character building goes, it's actually pretty decent. Like, it gives you a good reason to think like, oh yeah, this guy's in a shitty place. Like, I can see why this guy would maybe, even if you told him like, hey, you want $1 million, come survive getting hunted. Well, if he was just about to kill himself, maybe he, I could see him maybe like just going along with it if you told him, like, with how they build this character up. But that said, for what you get in this movie, you're right. You probably could have just dropped him in there and skipped that whole half hour and just made this a little bit tighter and faster of a movie. I don't know if that would make it better, but
yeah,
I get what you're saying. Like, having seen it before, that makes sense.
And it's not a huge complaint. It just, for this type of movie, it feels kind of out of place for them to have all this character building, for them just to have an action movie break out in the middle of this like drama that they're trying to put together. It's a weird flip flop of everything going on to then jump into this action movie where they're just like, pumping shotguns and shooting like automatic weapons and shit at each other, riding ATVs and all this stuff through the woods. So it's just a weird kind of choice.
My biggest weird thing with this is McGinley in this is, for an actor that I genuinely like he is just, I mean, everyone in this movie is chewing scenery. Like, the fact that these trees in this movie don't all have teeth marks in them is kind of amazing. But I mean, especially to start this movie when you have Busey in there, McGinley and Rutger Hauer in there, it is just a pissing contest for the first, this is probably the like basically minute like 20 to like, I don't know,
30, dies 33, something. So. Yeah, he dies like,
something like that.
Spoiler. Yeah, real early.
Well, yeah. But boy, I was like, man, McGinley really, it looks like they tried to dress him up like Jesse Ventura in Predator. Like, he has that same look, same cowboy hat, same like, I think he's even got the armband things on that I feel like I remember Ventura having, and someone's going to probably send me a picture like, he doesn't have that, you moron, and might be right. But he is so over the top until he's not in this movie. And I won't say why he's not, or what exactly happens with it, but basically up until he gets put in his place, he is just, I was like, for a guy that I've seen in so many things now, and granted, that's 30 years after this came out, like he's had tons of roles since then. I was like, this just doesn't fit him to be this kind of meathead. Like, I'll buy him being sadistic, but being like what's essentially like a action movie, like buff guy, like, walking testosterone, like boner, doesn't really fit him. And it's a fair description.
Yeah, I'd agree.
Past that, I'd say my other thing is I kind of feel like F. Murray Abraham's character, so Wolf Sr., he's a good actor.
Convincing
and
as a tough guy.
He's not convincing as a murderer. He's not convincing in this role at all. Like, he's so, especially with what happens to him and his son, when they make him kind of start to lose it, I'm like, it's just not, like, I'm sorry, like, let's just pretend this isn't a movie. Like, let's just put these two in an octagon and say fight. Ice-T's beating the ever-living fuck out of him 10 times out of 10, So yeah, that's not convincing at all. So I don't know what you do other than just recast him with someone else. I don't know who you get that would be a good fit for that. I don't know if you just write him and his kid off and just keep Gary Busey on set longer. If that would have been an option, I honestly think that would have been a better option. I feel like the only reason he's there is because his kid's there and he's like, I don't want to hunt people. And he's like, you're going to hunt people. And that's like half of their dialogue back and forth is arguing over whether or not he's going to do this hunt.
And he feels really out of place, just his stature based on everybody else. You know, we've got Rutger Hauer, who's a taller guy. We've got Charles S. Dutton, who's shorter, but he's stocky. We've got McGinley, who's huge, like he's a big dude. We've got Ice-T, who's average size. And then we have F. Murray Abraham. Well, we got Gary Busey, who's also really big. And then we've got F. Murray Abraham, who's just like below average height and maybe average weight. Maybe he's not even that short. He just appears so small next to all these other guys. Right. And the other like really big complaint that I have is the movie doesn't have enough Busey in it. Like he is such an imposing character when he is on screen. I'm sure you're going to mention the whole Scar angle and him telling the story of the Scar with the dog and how that was like all improvised on set. And it's legend has it that Rutger Hauer called him out at the end of him giving this little monologue.
I guess it's in Rutger Hauer's biography too.
Oh, okay.
Like he has a whole chapter bitching about Gary Busey in this speech.
That's great. Gary Busey gives this big long speech about this.
It almost makes me want to read Rutger Hauer's biography just for that.
Yeah. So, just for background, Gary Busey gives this big long monologue about this dog that he got when he was a kid, and he would taunt the dog. And one day when he gets to be, 13 or 14 or whatever, his dad takes him around the barn and the dog's in a pen. And the dad says, "You're going to fight that dog to the death." And he gives him this handful of cherry bombs because that was the trigger for the dog. And he throws one at the dog, and the dog charges him, and he breaks the dog's neck essentially after getting cut and getting his arm nibbled on a little bit. And the story goes that Rutger Hauer, this was all a memorized, like improvised soliloquy or monologue. And Rutger Hauer just yells bullshit during the take, and they cut that part. Yeah. And that's when I watched it this time and I knew that whole speech was coming. I was like, that's hilarious if that actually happened. But Gary Busey is just such a menacing actor, number one, and character in this movie. The way that he's like basically the CIA doctor, psychiatrist. And it was his idea. They mentioned when they're sitting around the table for the feast that this hunt was all his idea. This was all, he made this whole hunt up, and this was kind of his thing. It wasn't his property, but his thing was to hunt people. And he just goes out he doesn't go out like a bitch because he has this big fight with Ice-T at the cabin. And there's a shot in there where he goes into this room and he thinks they're hiding guns in this room. And it's all these heads in jars with their names Trophies. And shit. Yeah. And it's like The Simpsons, Nixon's head and shit.
Basically.
Yeah. And he goes and the camera pans around and there's an empty one. And I laughed so hard when they did this. There's an empty jar and they scan down and it's just like some plaque that you would get from like the trophy place when you won like second place and your 8-year-old bowling league or whatever. It just engraved. It's this bronze plate. It says Mason. I just laughed so hard. It's like, did they get somebody to custom send this overnight or something the night before Mason was coming here so they could attach this plaque to this shitty jar?
The thing about that speech that's so good is I feel like that monologue that he gives really is what sets the tone for the entire movie. Because before that point, if you haven't seen this before, you're just kind of like, okay, what's going on? You might know because of the cover of the movie or whatever, but it doesn't really play its hand. And honestly, it doesn't even really play its hand at that point. But once he gives that big monologue, it's like all the red flags are being thrown. All the warning bells are there. You're like, all right, something fucked up is about to happen. And the fact that I almost called him Ice Cube. The fact that Ice-T is just like, all right, I'm going to go to bed. See you guys in the morning or whatever. Yeah. That's the one thing in this movie that it's plot armor. Like if he just, bails at that point, are they still allowed to hunt him? Or like, I don't know. Like we'll never know that answer. But that's the one thing in this movie that you're like, if this character's not a fucking moron, he might be like, yo, I'm going to bail, guys. Like right now, have fun with your circle jerk here in this cabin with this poorly cut table and live edge table or whatever. You do you guys. I'm the fuck out of here. It's like something, but he doesn't. And the movie goes on. But yeah,
you guys doing some weird shit. I'm going to bed. That was my iced tea. You're welcome.
Close enough. But yeah, that's really where the whole tone of the movie changes. And from that point forward, it's like a switch is flicked to like, I mean, maybe that's why IMDb has this listed as a dark comedy, because it's kind of fucked up and weird. But like, that's where it switches from whatever this, you know, sad story drama is that's revolving around the character of Mason to buckle up, Buttercup, we're going hunting. You know, so
you better get the fuck out of here.
Yeah, more or less. Yeah, I mean, I don't really have a lot of other hates on this, and this is one that I don't know how many people have really seen this. Like, I know we've talked about this countless times, but I don't know if this is a popular movie or anything like that. The cast in this leads me to think that a lot of people should have seen it because it is a pretty well-casted movie. But, I mean, I don't know what, if any, theatrical release this had or if it went straight to video. I really don't know. So I don't really want to get into
theatrical release. I mean, I remember. I don't want to get into spoiling it, but this definitely had a theatrical release because I kind of wanted to see it when it got announced or when I saw a trailer for it, and that's what kind of led me. This was a movie that I had remembered seeing trailers for and wanted to see it, and ended up just catching it at the video store because I never got a chance to see it in the theater because I don't think it lasted very long. I think it was like
I wouldn't think so.
It was like a $7 million budget, and I think it made globally like 7.7. You know, so wasn't a huge hit.
Wow, you nailed it.
Oh, I looked at this earlier.
7.4 million for the budget, 7.7 gross. Opening weekend, US and Canada, 2.9. So it didn't make its money back. That's why we never got Surviving the Game again.
Yeah.
So we're surviving another game.
Yeah, there you go. Just imagine surviving another game. Yeah. I mean, this is like the tale as old as time, right? The most dangerous game. Yeah. So it's not that old, but still. I mean, there's been so many movies that have been based on this whole thing that this is just another drop in the bucket, but I think it's a pretty good one, personally.
I think this is one of the better ones, though. I think this is one of the more, I don't know if approachable is the right word, but I think it's one of the better, like, iterations of people hunting people, at least that I've seen in a movie. So
yeah, and I think just because the cast is so recognizable, you know, if you're anybody that watched TV in the 90s, yeah, and they're all good actors. It's even not like a bunch of deadbeats. That even if
we compare it to like Deadly Prey, which we talked about a year or two ago, like there's an argument to be made that Deadly Prey might be more entertaining because it's certainly more ridiculous.
Oh, it's certainly a lot more fun, I think. But
yeah, well, it's ridiculous fun. Same thing.
It doesn't take itself too seriously,
right? But I mean, if you're just asking what's the better movie, like objectively, this is the better movie by far.
I would agree.
So
I think that's spot on.
So I think we might have just played our hand on this, but what time is it, Sean?
Then you're in for a big treat, bro, because it's hot dog time.
So yeah, I'll go ahead and lead us off since I've been accused of not doing that. But I mean, for me, this is a full hot dog. Like, this is a movie, like, obviously I don't feel the need to go back and rewatch this every year or anything like that. It's not an annual thing, but it is rewatchable for sure. It's quite honestly, if you haven't seen this movie, you're actually in for something that's pretty entertaining for the most part. It's got not too many like overly questionable things in it. It's the kind of movie that there's a couple leaps of logic, but nothing so dumb that it takes you out of the movie. It's moderately fun for like a fucked up scenario that it is. It could use more Gary Busey. I'd argue that it could even use more Rutger Hauer in it, you know, for that matter. But at the end of the day, like, this movie's got violence. It's got some good one-liners in it. It's got Ice-T being a badass and kicking the shit out of white folk. Nothing wrong with that. I really don't have anything in this. There's no sin in this movie that makes it so bad to say that you shouldn't watch this unless you just have some kind of thing against movies that have any level of violence in it. I mean, this is, if you like any of the movies that we've talked about over the course of this show, or like at any level, this is at least worth giving a try. So it's a full hot dog for me.
Whose hot dog is this? Huh? Is it yours?
All right, so for me, there are two things that I love in this world. That's action movies and social commentary. And the great thing about this movie is that it has both. It has this whole like rich versus poor. It's got, I mean, in some sense, it's got this whole black versus white kind of thing going on. I think that everyone in this movie is, they just, with the exception of maybe F. Murray Abraham, the performance is great. Like, everybody's performance is great. Everyone is cast really well, except possibly F. Murray Abraham, just because he looks so small, like we've already mentioned, in comparison to everybody else. I think all the people that are hunters, other than the kid, Junior, are so unlikable that when they get their comeuppance, like when Ice-T takes care of them and doesn't take care of them in a loving way, it's like you'd kind of cheer for. I mean, you don't kind of cheer for him. You definitely cheer for him. You're like, yes, it's like the little guy finally wins. And, you know, it's just that this kid, Junior, he just doesn't want to have anything to do with it the whole time. He every chance that he gets to like say basically, I don't want to do this, he basically tells you. And the dad is constantly like, suck it up, you little shithead. We're going to go kill us some dudes tonight or whatever. I don't know. Anyways, the movie's a lot of fun. It's a big silly cat and mouse game. I can't get enough of it. I give Surviving the Game a full hot dog way up in the air. I'm going to mirror what John said. If you like any of these movies that we talk about, if our kind of taste in movies sounds like even remotely something that you'd be interested in, I think you should just check this movie out. It's a lot of fun. It's, you know, it doesn't take itself too seriously. And you get to see at the end, I'm not going to spoil it, but you get to see Rutger Hauer dress up like almost like Steven Seagal in a way. And, you know, carry out his little Steven Seagal
I thought
fantasy.
that too, and I forgot about it. And
the ending, I have to say, the ending to me, just like straight up bare bones, the ending is kind of anticlimactic and kind of a little bit disappointing. Like the last few minutes of the movie, like the very end of the movie, just kind of seemed like they ran out of ideas or what they were going to do. The whole, like the showdown that happens at the end just seems like a really weird end.
Well, this is also the second movie in a row where the movie ends and it fucking ends hard. Like there's no second ending. It's just like, here's the thing. And then credits. That's it. Like,
see you later.
And I'm fine with that.
Fade to black.
I don't know why you're turning him into Mike Tyson, but
he's got himself a little bit of a lisp.
So with that in mind, we ask you, the people who answer our questions of the week, a very simple question this week. And this question is, how'd you get that scar? We're going to start over on Facebook for our question of the week. And our first response is from friend of the show, Kelsey. And she says, shark attack is what I tell people, but transplant is the real answer. Switching gears, we're going to move over to Instagram because we only got responses on those two platforms today. And our friend Old Dirty Bastard, one of the members of the Krusty Boys, our Mortal Emily's, we'll go with that. Apparently I can't talk anymore. So Mortal Emily, Old Dirty Bastard says, eating two of the best meatball subs a man has ever made caused that scar. And then our friend Scott over at You Run Podcast. Of course, you can find both the You Run Podcast and You Can Eat That Crust at yourunpodcast.com. All their great stuff. Scott says, which scar? You're going to need to be more specific. You know, whatever you want to say, whatever you're willing to share, we're willing to listen. Still on Instagram, our friends over at Dissect That Film said, hula hooping accident. At NostalgiaMan85 said, I'm telling you, buttered sausage is where it's at. And then our friends over at Dissect That Film, again, said, hula hooping accident. So they chimed in twice with this very dangerous hula hooping accident.
I wanted to reiterate
where did
the dangers of the hula hoop.
It's a very dangerous sport. Is it a sport? Yeah. Sure. Sean, where did you get that scar?
I'll talk about the one that you can actually see. It's from a cat. Actually, you can't see it. It's under my mustache. I got scratched by a cat. My dad was always like, don't get your face too close to the cat. You're going to get scratched and you'll get a scar. And one time my cat was not looking at me and I snuck up behind her and I didn't try to scare her, but I must have scared her. And she jumped and did a 180 and like attached herself to my face. And I got her off and I sat like in my house. You had to sit, everybody sat in the same room to watch TV. And I sat kind of at the angle so my dad couldn't see. But I thought maybe I'd be able to sit at an angle where he couldn't see for, I don't know, maybe a few years until it kind of went away, or maybe I grew a mustache or whatever. He noticed. He didn't notice that night, but he hey, where'd you get that scratch from? Cat. Thanks, Dad.
Garfield. I'd say my only interesting scar, it's not really that interesting, is I have one on my arm. And my dad had this genius idea, like, we're going to go to the recycling center and save the planet. Okay. I was a kid. I was probably doing something stupid. And honestly, I don't even remember what I cut my arm on because, like a true kid, you didn't realize it hurt until you looked at it and saw a bunch of blood and whatnot. And
it's always the
some
best.
Piece of metal cut my arm and it cut deep enough like I could see the fat in my arm. Couldn't see the bone. I could see the fat in my arm. I had to get some. Yeah. I was like, oh. And he's like, what the hell did you do? I'm like, I don't know. And I still don't remember what I did. All I know is I got like I think it was like 12 stitches or something like that. And yeah, there's a pretty decent scar on my arm now from it. So it's covered by a tattoo.
At least you got stitches, though. I mean, some people would be like, rub some dirt on it. Suck it up.
So I don't think my dad wanted to get me stitches. This happened twice. This happened when I separated my shoulder as well. I separated my shoulder and I was sitting there concussed and looking disheveled. It's probably a good way to put it. My mother came home and she goes, what the hell happened to him? He goes, he fell off his bike jumping off some giant hill, which is accurate. She goes, you need to take him to the hospital. He looks at him. He goes, he's fine. She goes, no, you need to take him to the hospital. He goes, okay, well, we'll go at halftime. So I had to wait till halftime to go to the hospital. You know? In fairness, Dad might have been right. They didn't do a whole lot. They gave me a sling for my arm and didn't do shit for a concussion back then. They just said, don't fall asleep, which was not good advice because all I wanted to do was take like a really long nap. But yeah, he did the same thing. Yeah.
Stay awake.
Get out of here. I remember I wouldn't be surprised at all if he brought me home and just put like a Band-Aid on it, not even covering the whole thing, like, you know, just the middle of it, and there's still plenty poking out. And my mother was probably like, take him to the fucking hospital. Yeah, my dad was 100% that guy that was like, he's fine.
He'll be fine. He'll live.
Yeah. So that's it. We don't have any good Jaws scar stories or Chasing Amy scar stories or anything like that, or at least not that we're sharing. Maybe we'll get a Patreon and tell you some of those stories if we have them. I don't. But anyway, in the meantime, please do follow us. We are at Dewey Pod Monster on all the social medias or at crap.town on Blue Sky. Find us either way on there. Search us out. That's where you can find all of our stuff. You can also find us at crap.town. That is our site. Rockin' Tomatoes, also our site, or you can find us at You Run Podcast. While you're there, please do check out one of the other shows. There's a lot of great content there. All different kinds of varieties. Always something for you to watch. Sean, what am I forgetting?
Well, I was going to mention that if you want your question of the week answer read on the show, you can do that by responding on social media at Dewey Pod Monster to the question of the week that John posts. We usually post it the day that we're going to go and record and whatnot. So sometimes it's Monday, sometimes it's Friday, sometimes it's just some random day in the week. If you are interested in any of the things that we talked about during the show, there will be links to those things in the show notes. And most of them are going to be free. We try to make them as free as possible. But once in a while, you know, it's just inevitable. You can't always get everything you want for free. So it'll probably be an Amazon link. If you click that link, it'll say Amazon right next to it. If you click that link, it's an affiliate link. And anything that you purchase after you click that link, we get a really small cut of that. We might get a penny or two for every million or 3 gazillion that you spend. Other than that, if you want to follow me on social media, you can find me at internalbleeding.crap.town on Blue Sky. I am only on Blue Sky. That's the only place I am. I put little shitty clips or YouTube things that I find that I laugh about. I have a weird sense of humor. So hopefully you laugh at it too. If you don't, fuck off. You don't have to follow me. It's free too. You know, I don't charge you for it. So yeah, other than that, that's all I got. Swell up, I guess.
Swell up. That's all we got. Fuck off. Have a great weekend.
Swell up.
Or week.
Blah, blah.